The acting White House chief of staff says President Trump didn't expect so much opposition to his plan to host next year's G-7 summit at his Florida resort. The president now says he will not host the gathering of world leaders at his Doral resort in South Florida. Acting chief of staff Mick Mulvaney faces his own pushback for acknowledging the president held up military aid to pressure Ukraine to investigate Democrats. Paula Reed is at the White House. Paula, are there signs that Mulvaney, who is acting chief of staff, might lose his job entirely?
Tony, a former White House official tells CBS News the knives are out for Mulvaney. And his press conference last week drew criticism from both sides of the aisle. But so far, there's no sign the president is unhappy, and the Trump campaign has embraced Mulvaney's messaging, even selling a T-shirt with Mulvaney's now infamous quote, "Get over it."
I still think I'm doing a pretty good job as the chief of staff, and I think the president agrees.
Acting chief of staff Mick Mulvaney insisted Sunday he is not stepping down.
Absolutely, positively not.
In an administration known for upheaval, Mulvaney's role seems less certain after an explosive press conference last Thursday.
Get over it. There's going to be political influence in foreign policy.
Mulvaney undermined the president's impeachment defense by confirming a quid pro quo in why aid to Ukraine was held up.
3 issues for that: the corruption in the country, whether or not other countries were participating in the support of the Ukraine, and whether or not they were cooperating in an ongoing investigation with our Department of Justice.
I'll leave to the chief of staff to explain what it is he said and what he intended.
Mulvaney recanted his statement, but his performance exemplified how the White House has failed to offer a coherent defense against the impeachment inquiry.
If you held up the money for 3 reasons, that's a quid pro quo.
I'm not acknowledging there's 3 reasons. Again, let's go back.
You said 3 reasons.
Go back to I recognize that. Go back to what actually happened in the real world.
Mulvaney's name has also emerged in the impeachment inquiry itself. A former presidential advisor testified that Mulvaney worked with the president's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, on a rogue operation involving Ukraine. Mulvaney's quid pro quo admission last week wasn't the only thing Republicans were having a hard time defending. It was also the president's decision to award himself a huge contract by hosting next year's G7 summit at his hotel in Florida.
This just creates more controversy that, quite frankly, we don't need right now.
Mr. Trump was not expecting Republicans to criticize the decision, and in a rare move, he reversed course on Saturday night.
The president will need all the allies he can get as Democrats ramp up their coordinated messaging strategy. Today, House Democrats are releasing a fact sheet and a video containing the most damaging evidence they've gathered so far in their impeachment inquiry. Gail.
Boy, Paula, unless you're cutting a nice, juicy steak, never good to hear the knives are out when they're talking about your job. Thank you very much. We'll talk to you a little bit later on.